Silencing comedians is anti-American and dangerous. These are the words of Jimmy Kimmel, who is back on his ABC late-night show. His suspension 1 week ago sparked a national debate about free speech. Politicians and media figures are warning that critics of Donald Trump were being systematically silenced. Meanwhile, the president continues to threaten ABC and other late-night shows. Our guest today is American comedian Brian Lennon, who has been living in the Czech Republic for 11 years. Welcome to DVTV.
Thank you for having me.
Look, I never imagined I would be in a situation like this. I barely paid attention in school. But one thing I did learn from Lenny Bruce and George Carlin and Howard Stern is that a government threat to silence a comedian the president doesn't like is anti-American. That's anti-American.
Would you like to be a comedian in the United States right now?
No. No. I wouldn't like to be in the United States right now, period. I'm planning a trip. I was planning a trip with my girlfriend, who is Czech, to go visit my family in the Midwest and also some friends on the West Coast, where I'm from. And I'm having a lot of misgivings about it, you know, second thoughts, like what's the country, because we're planning it for next June. So I'm thinking, what is the country actually going to look like next June? And I can't believe that I'm having to have thoughts like that.
And the reason is the government or the Trump administration? I
mean, I see, and I was just reading that 500 political scientists and over 300 scholars in America believe that the country is heading towards some sort of authoritarianism. I'm a student of history, European history in particular, Spain, what happened in Spain with Franco, what happened with Mussolini, and of course in Germany. But I think Trump is the most like Mussolini, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think he's a fascist, actually. I wouldn't say that, but I think he's a populist and an authoritarian, and he's trying to move the country toward that. And I know a lot of people, and not just liberals like myself, but you know, my father's a conservative. I am not a full-on liberal. I have certain conservative values, especially around money and taxes and things like that. And people across the board are concerned in the US. It's not just, you know, leftists like these radicals on the right like to say. It's average people who maybe voted for him because they just didn't see a better option and they were hoping. My oldest friend, who I never thought would vote for someone like that, he voted for him, and now he's seriously regretting it.
Well, as a comedian and American, how do you feel about this whole thing with Jimmy Kimmel?
I mean, as a comedian, you know, we have a great tradition of stand-up comedy in America. It's basically invented in America, going back to the 40s, the Sid Caesar show. I saw my first stand-up show when I was 15. You know, we have clubs in strip malls all around the country. It's not just like in the major cities. It's such a part of who we are and the fabric of who we are. And it's so important that comedians, when they're on stage, whether it's a national stage like the Tonight Show or the Jimmy Kimmel Show or something like that, or whether it's in a basement club somewhere, it's so important that comedians be able, it's the last bastion of free speech. It's the last place where you can say things, you can try new jokes that maybe aren't completely ready yet, you can risk, you can say things that you wouldn't say in public because you're making jokes. It's a place where people connect and where everybody on all sides of the political spectrum can kind of laugh at themselves and have themselves be poked fun at. And Jimmy Kimmel, you know, in his world, you know, it's not as if it's a bastion of free speech to begin with. I mean, they're beholden to advertisers. It's not like they can just say whatever they want. They're beholden to the affiliates to a certain extent. the point is that he was threatened by a president who, and not directly by a president, but by an FCC chairman who, it's supposed to be, I don't know if people watching here know this, but the federal, FCC is supposed to be an impartial, nezávislý, independent organization. Yeah. And so what Trump has done is just hired his cronies who just work for him, and it's shifting the power balance. It is not, an FCC chairman is not supposed to directly threaten ABC.
Yeah, you are talking about Brandon Carr, and we actually have the video from the podcast when he was criticizing Jimmy Kimmel. We can see it.
But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC.
And within hours, Kimmel's show was suspended. So what kind of precedent is this?
There is precedent, unfortunately, for viewers in this country who maybe aren't all that familiar with American history. We did have a period in the 1950s, for example, in the early 50s, when there was a huge, people were losing their jobs because they were called communists. They were threatened that if they even went to a communist meeting, they could lose their job or something like that. I'm blanking the name of the senator, Senator Joe McCarthy. And for about 5 or 6 years, it was terrifying. Like, people were losing their livelihoods, they could never work again, and things like that. And so America has always been more authoritarian than it's willing to admit, but the lines that have been crossed in the last 8-9 months of this organization are unprecedented. And to have it's undignified to have a sitting president arguing with a talk show host. Like, there was a certain dignity to that office where the president didn't have to engage in a teenager level power struggle with a talk show host. I compared it to Mussolini because Mussolini's ego was so gigantic.
And do you think that Trump is afraid of this type of talk shows, or
100%.
He's just bothered, or I don't know, offended, or I don't know?
I think he's afraid of appearing weak. That's what drives him. Everything that he does is about appearing strong. And he's incredibly insecure. And, actually, as Kimmel, I think, pointed out, Trump's threats and the way he's behaving has had the opposite effect. He had 6.3 million viewers in this first night back.
Yeah, exponential growth.
The ACLU got 400 national actors together in a formal protest of what Trump did. It ignited a whole conversation about free speech in America. So I think those are the positives that I take away from it. I try not to be just a doomsayer. I'm trying to stay positive and think, well, maybe people will fight this. Maybe people will stand up. One of the things that I love about my country is, if you go back to the 18th century, when the British were trying to take the country, we moved there, they were trying to tax us. We didn't just take it. There were rules of engagement at the time, rules of war. We broke those rules. We took their lives in incredibly violent ways, but we were defending our country, and they left, and we took our country. And I'm just hoping that spirit is still alive in us somewhere, and that people will rise up. I'm hopeful still that people will rise up and say, no, this is America, we don't do this.
And have you seen it? I mean, after Kimmel was suspended in the public response?
Zaujal vás rozhovor a chcete slyšet víc? Jednoduché řešení. Staňte se našimi předplatiteli a pusťte si ho v plné délce na webu DVTV. A pokud to ještě neděláte, začněte nás odebírat. Žádná luxuska už vám neunikne.